Hello and welcome again to The Art of Being Neighborly. I'm Ron Oliveda. You know, when it comes to neighboring and relationships in general, forgiveness always seems to be a particularly difficult subject. Whether you're on the giving or the receiving end, it can be the most challenging part of any relationship. Forgiveness is needed at almost every corner of life, and when freely given, brings about deeper, more meaningful relationships. Those who truly forgive bring life to families and neighborhoods. However, those who struggle to forgive end up isolating themselves and create even greater tension. Today I'm positive you're going to enjoy getting to know an amazing neighbor who truly and profoundly understands the subject of forgiveness.
I ended up in Austin, coming from East Texas, via Nacogdoches. I went to Stephen F. Austin State University, and that's where I met Chris. We eventually married, moved to Austin. We were both very busy. We had careers. We were average. We had a child. We were thinking of having another one. You know, the nice house, the nice neighborhood, the cars, you know, all the stuff. We were the, what I like to call the midpoint in the American demographic. We were very average. We were doing what we were supposed to do. We were in the right place, and everything was on track. In 1986, on August 12th, I turned 32. The day after my birthday, I had to go to work. And so I got up at 5 a.m. like always, showered and shaved, always had some Raisin Bran for breakfast, and out the door, went to work, and it was just another day at work. Nothing unusual. When I went to the sitters, the daycare, the lady who ran the place looked at me real funny. And she asked me what I was doing there. And I was there to pick up my son. And she said that he hadn't come in. And I thought that was very unusual. If he had been sick, if my wife had been sick, if anything had happened, it was our practice to stay in touch, and she would have called. When I came sliding around the corner to our house, I saw the big crime scene ribbon all the way around our house, a bunch of police cars in front of the curb, neighbors across the street in little clusters watching and pointing, and you know, I was the center of attention. I ducked under the ribbon and went across. I was crossing my front yard because the driveway, where I usually parked in the driveway, it was all full. And several cops converged on me and stopped me. The sheriff came out and stopped us and identified himself and wanted to know who I was. And it was in the yard that he said she was dead. They wanted to know where I'd been and what I'd been doing. And it hurt to know that I was being questioned like a suspect, but intellectually I knew, because everybody watches TV and movies, that, you know, they have to ask these things. So I was answering as best I could, trying to, you know, dot all these I's, cross these T's, and then move on with the investigation. About 6 weeks after my wife's death, it was late afternoon. I'm in the kitchen making dinner. I have my son with me, and I heard a knock on the door. And rather than leave a 3-year-old in the kitchen with, you know, pots and pans going on, I picked him up, had him on my hip, and I went to the front door. And the sheriff was there with a number of deputies, and he said that he was there to arrest me. And I was absolutely stunned. I think I said something like, you know, "Are you kidding?" I've tried in the past, you know, what must have been going on in my son's mind? He's 3 years old. You know, I got him on my hip. The last time he'd seen the police, it had been a really bad day, and they were back. He was hanging on to me for everything he was worth, and they had to peel him out of my arms, and he's crying and calling for me and trying to reassure him, but you really can't. Being arrested is one thing, but I think having my son pulled out of my arms like that was probably the worst part. For the first time in my life, I was handcuffed and put in the backseat of a police car, and I'd never been there before. When that happens, you see the world differently. You see yourself differently. And the power of the state becomes very immediate and very concrete. And you have no choice. I assumed this was going to be a painful, expensive, arduous, emotionally taxing trial in every sense of that word. But because I was innocent, because they had no hard and fast stuff, and we questioned everything they put up as evidence, I figured at the end of the day, it would be not guilty and be, now I can start my life again. But rock bottom is seldom where you think it is. When they came back with the guilty verdict, I was genuinely shocked. I collapsed into the chair. You have to stand up for the reading of the verdict. And it was the same way when we went through sentencing. I was already reeling from being found guilty. But then they gave me a life sentence. I sat in the Williamson County Jail for a couple weeks. But on March 4th, 1987, I walked through the back gates of TDC. That was where I saw my son for the last time while I was inside. He's getting tired of coming to see me. He didn't like having to go to prison. And so when he became that age, he wrote me a letter and said he wanted to end the visits. And in that piece of mail, I discovered that he was going to be legally adopted by the people raising him, and he was going to legally change his name. For me, that was my rock bottom. It was a hard day. When your son rejects you. While I was in prison, before I saw the light of God, I was an angry man. I was unjustly in the penitentiary. I'd lost almost everything, all my assets, almost every one of my friends. And I was in the unusual situation where I knew who was responsible for my incarceration. I knew who had testified against me, who had obviously told the police certain things. I had a copy of the transcripts. One of the reasons that my attorneys were so frustrated was they smelled a rat. There was something wrong with my case, but they just couldn't get to whatever it was. They knew it was there, they just couldn't get it. It was only after my conviction, after I'd been inside for a long time, that we learned that there were some police reports. One of them was that the police went around and interviewed neighbors. And the neighbors said that, oh yeah, they had, over a number of days and weeks, they had seen this van come up and park behind our house, a little wooded area back there, and the guy would get out and walk up and down the fence and look at our house, and he was casing the place. There was also a police report about a check being cashed after my wife's death. The San Antonio Police Department had apparently sent my wife's credit card, or at least a copy of it, to the Sheriff's Department because someone had tried to use it in San Antonio after her death. There was no follow-up on any of this stuff. The point is this stuff was suppressed. There was a specific moment in the transcripts at my trial when Bill White, one of my attorneys, got the judge to ask the prosecutor directly if he had anything else besides the stuff that had been presented. And he said, no, sir, there's nothing else. And it wasn't until years later we got access to the files through the Texas Open Records Act that we found all this stuff. I knew and I know, as most people do, that if you want to be forgiven, you must forgive. I didn't want to. But I knew I was supposed to, so I consciously, deliberately forgave that first person. I let it go, as we say. And it caught me off guard. I felt better about it. I felt lighter. I felt better. I felt cleansed. I felt new. I felt healed. And it helped me do it the next time for the next person, because I had a list. And I went down the list, forgiving these people, feeling better and better about each one of them. And it's all counterintuitive. It doesn't seem to make any sense. But as a good friend of mine and my attorney, John Rayleigh, told me one time, And he didn't make this up, but he just reminded me of it, that keeping that sort of animosity and hate and revenge in your heart is like drinking poison and hoping the other guy dies from it. My wife sometimes complains that I forgive too quickly. But that's a compliment, I think. Life is short, and the older you get, the faster time travels. And you don't want to waste your time. And there's no bigger waste than to be stewing on something that somebody did to you and just having your gut churn and your time wasted, and that's time you'll never get back. And you're wasting your life when you do that. And you're ruining not just your situation, but the people at work, the people in your family, the people in your neighborhood. There's a reason we're told to forgive. It's just not all self-interest. I don't have any harsh feelings for the people who put me away and the ones who fought and tried to delay and stop my release. They have their own issues, lives. They have their ups and downs and their trials and their hurdles. If I want to focus on that, if I want to spend my time refighting those old battles again and again, I'll be living in the past. I'll be going through all that again. Life's too short. And that wasn't a fun time for me, so I really don't want to revisit it. But I can learn from it. My name is Michael Morton, and this is my story of forgiveness.
Michael loses his wife. His son is taken from him. Then he's wrongly convicted of a crime he didn't commit. While he's in prison for 25 years, his son rejects him, and many of his friends and family abandon him. When I think about Michael's story, it's almost incomprehensible. How could anyone recover from such injustice and pain? As you listen to his story, I hope you heard the answer and were inspired by forgiveness. Nothing is as life-changing and powerful as forgiveness. As we conclude, let me ask you a question today. Is there someone in your life, perhaps in your very neighborhood, who has hurt you or wronged you in some way? My hope is that we, those who live here in Central Texas, will grow in the art of being neighborly by learning the power of forgiveness like Michael did, and applying what you learned from his experience to someone who needs your forgiveness. Thank you for watching. Until next time, I'm Ron Oliveira, and this is The Art of Being Neighborly.